and welcome to the Argyle Finance Solutions Expo, Future Ready Technologies for Finance. Michael with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we'll turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we thank today's sponsors, SAP and RAMP. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience at any time during virtual booths from the main agenda page. These include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag ArgyleDigital.
And with that, Shu, we'd like to introduce Shu Jernay, Chief Financial Officer. Over to you, Shu. We're really excited to have you here with us.
Thank you. Hi. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Shuhan Jernay. You can call me Shu.
Shuhan Jernay, Chief Financial Officer. We're excited to have Shu for her opening keynote presentation titled Reengineering the Office of the CFO, Building a Technology-Ready Finance Function. Shu, so happy to have you back with us again. Thank you. Welcome. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Shu. Welcome. Good morning. How's everybody doing? I'm so excited to be here to discuss re-engineering the office of the CFO with you guys today. I hope you're going to find something interesting through this discussion. I have a mechanical engineering degree. I actually have a master's degree in mechanical engineering, but I have over 20 years of corporate finance experience. I have worked with Fortune 500 companies, PE firms, family office companies, different industries, different size, phase of the companies. But one thing I see in common, to me, finance is not just a reporting function. Finance is a value creation function. If you agree to the definition of the finance function, I hope you'll find today's discussion meaningful and relevant. Next slide, please. So from a PE perspective, I see a pool of data. So over 50% of the CFOs actually cited that fragmented data slow systems are one of the big challenges they're facing. I don't know if you face similar problems, but last month when I was on a panel discussion with Argyle and all the finance leaders stated one thing that is garbage in, garbage out. So the data integrity in today's world still is a topic, still is an issue. That is something that we have to address. And once we have the data integrity, we need to have all the data come together that help us with insights. So we need to have integration. Once we have that part, we have the speed to real-time insight, then we can leverage AI to do all sorts of fun things, scenario planning, all the forecasting, so on and so forth. That's shifting finance from explaining facts, what happened in the past, to what's going to happen in the future, to the foresight, and to help business achieve better business results. And I think most of us agree this is the direction that we're taking, but how do we do it? Next slide, please. The vision of the modern CFO function. I want to explain this through an example. I think that's help us better appreciate that what can be done in today's world and how do we achieve meaningful business results. I have worked with one of the PE firm portfolio companies, and on the surface, on the aggregate level, this firm performance has nothing anomaly, that you wouldn't pick out anything to say this is definitely an opportunity to do better. However, once you dig into it, once you go to the granularity level, you will see that not every SKU make the same profit level. And then in the PE world, that profitability, one metric, EBITDA, is one thing that we often focus on. So that tells us that we have opportunity to do better with that particular portfolio company. We started from data integrity, that two systems, one set of data, they need to reconcile. And that's something that we addressed. It's not easy, but we did it. And then all the systems have to talk to each other. ERP, CRM, treasury system, FP&A forecast. You build a layer of automatic pooling that input data into the forecasting system. And then from there, you can do all sorts of different things and spit that out in a BI dashboard, whatever that particular firm that tracking as metrics. And then I challenge the team. We actually did it on a daily basis. We do refresh. Let's stick to the example of EBITDA. We do daily refresh of EBITDA. Do we have all the most accurate information that are 100% perfect? No. But we do have confidence that the trend is definitely accurate. It's just not perfect information. But the speed is on a daily basis. So you can say it's almost real time. And on a weekly basis, we have all the function leaders that come in together that have discussions about underlying business performance and looking at all the metrics of what we call each other accountable. And then we can discuss what kind of actions we want to take in the marketplace, and we assign ownership to each of the actions we're going to take, and we come back with results. What achieved, what challenges we're facing, so the weekly discussion become much more meaningful. The process of building the trust in the data and form the habit of have a regular cadence to have a weekly meeting, that takes a little bit of time, but that pays off. That is what helped this particular portfolio company achieve the meaningful EBITDA improvement. It's more than 300 basis points expansion. And that's not through commercial strategies. That's not through contract renegotiations. That's not headcount reductions or cost restructuring. That is purely finance, putting things together in a digestible, real-time format, and have a forum, have a process, have people buy in the process, in the data integrity, and drive outcome, drive actions, drive behavioral change. So that is how we did it. That's, in my mind, is a perfect example of how we modernize the finance function. Your particular company potentially have a different challenges here and there, but overall, I hope that example tell you a little bit something of how it can be done. And this is part that is particularly meaningful because, next slide, please. I think the finance function, in order to drive values, one big part of our responsibility is to drive the confidence in the decision making. If we don't have consistent data, if all the other functions have their own pseudo process, have their own database, have their own models, and argue about the underlying data that reconcile who has the right data and whose data is accurate, that takes time. So for example, this particular company that I work with, on a monthly close process, that they spend days, sometimes even weeks, to reconcile all of the information coming from different systems. That is not meaningful for business outcome driven. and that have the other functional leaders questioning the finance capabilities, therefore have reservation about the decisions that driving coming out of finance data. I think business decision making is a process. And over time, if we do that repeatedly, we're transparent, it's verifiable, that will build confidence and trust in the decision making and in finance as a function. Particularly here, I want to highlight the scenario planning part. This part we can leverage AI, we can do it quickly as long as we know what's the assumption and speed out the outcome, verifiable, that help us with confidence. That's just the finance part of the mechanics of how it's done. However, in the broader team discussions, this is very meaningful. I don't like to do one data point of focus. I like to do a range of the focus from the midpoint, what's most likely going to happen, to upside, to downside. Within normal distribution, this is most likely the outcome of the range of the business outcome. I think that's more of a realistic expectation. And I understand that needs constantly data refresh. This is why that AI help us greatly. But with all the business leaders, when you are in a meeting, that you are not in a crisis, you're talking about the volatility in the marketplace, you're talking about uncertainty, but you can do it in a calm environment. And everyone weigh in, everyone discuss about their concerns, and then you have a grip on of actions once the trigger reached, such as what if the input cost increase, what working capital needs to be added, and what if we take a pricing in the marketplace but market share started to change. All of those key decisions scenario planning can be discussed at these weekly meetings way ahead of time. So we plan ahead of time. Once the trigger reached, we just need to take actions. And those actions has already agreed upon. So that greatly reduced that friction of discussing different points, especially when it's in a volatile environment. And to me, that's very meaningful. And that's how you build confidence over time. Next slide, please. We said AI is important. I think we all agree AI is a very useful tool in today's environment, and it's a very hot topic nonetheless, of course. However, without governance, I don't fully trust AI. Me as a CFO, and we all finance professionals, we all know that we can't just say AI did this to auditors. We can't just say that's a black box, no one can explain it. That will not pass auditors, that will not give the board the confidence. So AI is still pretty much an assistant role, and then we embedded them in part of the process. We can validate all their assumptions. We can see the output of the AI spit out, and we still have to have owners keep an eye on AI, but AI can help us do the work much faster and enable us to do meaningful work instead of the manual and repeated process. So I like AI, but I like AI to be checked, and I like to have traceable and all the auditable trails. That's how I trust AI. Next slide, please. We all know that AI is beneficial, and we agree that AI that needs to be validated, not just translated to run freely on its own, but it's not free. So how do we think about investments? Well, to me, and to most of the companies, I think in today's world, we don't have the capital to do multiple year, really big bang, revamp the entire infrastructure of technology systems. We are doing what I call the quick win and ROI driven investment, just like anything else. As a finance leader, if I endorse anything, I approve anything, or I recommend any approach, I need to be confident on the return. So in the early stage, 20% plus ROI is something that I deem to be relatively easy to achievable. And then with that, you can start from isolated areas and then you achieve quick wins, which free up either resources or have cost savings. And then you can go to other areas, use that savings, use the resources to do the next batch of the modernization through AI technology. This is incremental value creation, and it will accelerate performance. You have quick wins. It helps you break down the barriers and get the support from the internal systems, from the internal people. It is not something that we can do overnight. So mentality change and culture change to really support, to shift that behavior. This is how we do it, incrementally, gradually, but the performance is going to help you tell that story and convince people. Next slide, please. Well, this is something that I gave you an example. And I'll tell you that what we did through that example, as I summarized, to look at it from a high level, the framework that I took after that portfolio company is first, we look at the data. We want to ensure we have data integrity. And then, which by the way, that one of the companies I work with, I was in charge of that. I was responsible because finance is ultimately responsible for finance results. So I was in charge of the data integrity. I learned a lot through that responsibility of tech stack for data, which is very interesting and meaningful in today's world. So we have data integrity, then we need to identify system gaps. They all need to talk to each other, need to coherent, and then have one single source of truth. From that, we start building of the dashboard, of the forecasting, pulling in information automatically. Where do we get input? How do we spit out the output? How do we validate all the information? So on and so forth. That's the finance roadmap. And from the investment of how do we get there systematically, is the prioritization of the ROI, the quick wins. Those are the two criteria that we used. Once we have AI, we can leverage AI to really help us with all the different forecast scenario planning, help us with the decision making, help the business leaders trust the process, help the business leaders look at all the information with confidence so they can take actions and we can change behaviors. And of all of this, of course, don't forget to strengthen your governance of the AI system. And as an outcome, one of the great benefits is actually the talent upscaling in the end. People naturally spend more time on the things more impactful to help drive business results. And it's become a muscle within the organization. So the culture shifts and then behavior shifts. That's really a beautiful thing. To summarize, I think in today's world, for finance function, especially at senior finance leadership level, I think the speed to the decision making is crucial. I think to have the governance, to trust what we present is meaningful. That's how you build confidence, trust. And then to drive, to have regular forum, a process in making decisions, to have meaningful business discussions is important. And ultimately, you change behaviors. You change how people take actions. And you get finance invited to have a seat at the table. We're not as seen as someone who's challenged the business leaders with the scorecard, but we are seen as a true partner because we help them think through all the things. We help them achieve better results. And to me, that is the way to unlock the value. With that, next slide, please. I will open up the floor and see that if any one of you have any comments or questions that we can use the rest of the time to take a look. All right, let's see what we have already. Is there reluctance to ensure compliance or governance needs are met regarding AI? I will say that to me, this is a must-have. If we don't have compliance or governance that utilizing AI, then I would rather not use AI. Because if I can't trust something is reliable, that is not helping me. That's actually create more work. Then I'm ultimately responsible, finance as a function, ultimately responsible for putting out the information that's trustworthy. If we don't have reliance, we don't have compliance, we don't have a governance, how do you ensure that? You ended up spending more time. Somehow you still have to do the work. It's just not in a policy format, in the regular process format. You still have to do the work. It's just gonna be another manual process. So to me, that's not worth it. If we implement AI, I would say upfront, we have to think about how do we govern the AI process. So that's my opinion. All right, the next question is as someone currently working inside a finance team that is still heavily relying on spreadsheets and legacy systems, where would you realistically start if you had to modernize the function without disrupting day-to-day operations? Very good question. This is a reality, right? So I will say that take a look at where you spend your manual process. Do you do reconciliation? You rely on spreadsheets. You rely on legacy systems. But do you have data integrity issues? Do you do reconciliation of which system to get where to get data? And how do we trust data? Do you have the same set of data but coming from two systems, they don't match each other? If that's the question, if that's the problem you're talking about, then I would say data integrity is the first thing to address. And without interrupting day-to-day functions, I understand that. But this is, if you think about this part in the finance function, this is the investment upfront to pay off later to reduce time. I think I will challenge the team, whoever that is most painful, that in the process, challenge them to come up with different ways of doing their work, but give them free up a little capacity or just tell us the problems. We need to identify the root cause of the problem. Is it data integrity? If there is a problem there, we need to focus on that. And how do we focus on that? We need to challenge the entire team. Either we shift the process or we have to get some other people that may be meaningful for other team to take on, or even temporarily to take on, and or someone add one simple step in their process to free up some capacity so we can deal with the data integrity issue on the team. And the worst case, I'm talking about worst case, we may have to, if unpack the whole entire process, most of the time you're gonna find a little capacity just by doing that, to step by step looking at the entire process from the beginning to the end, to identify who has potential capacity to help. Say that we exhaust that, that's not enough the capacity we're talking about. Then we may have to do the ROI analysis to even show the leaders, is it worth it to pay people over time to do this upfront invest of free up the capacity later. Once again, the process is data integrity, system integration, and then think about layer on the data pooling automation, dashboard, and then weekly process, decision making, and then taking actions. And you see the business performance improvements, you see the working capital better, and then you see the free cash flow. So do the work to think how we can get this process done that it give us the meaningful return. I don't know your particular company well enough to comment on where potentially is the breaking point, is the starting point. But if you want to have a meaningful conversation for your particular firm, I'm more than happy to put our heads together to think through this. Just look at it step by step. That's the first thing. Map it out and identify the opportunity step, and then go after that low-hanging fruit hard. That's where I will start. Okay, so next question. From my experience as a CFO, what has been the hardest internal resistance to overcome when you're introducing new technologies? Was it people, process, or trust in the data? Very good question. I think that the resistance from internal initially is the trust in data. So most of the companies I work in, the data is not perfect. That's not the stage that most companies operate at. And without that data integrity, the trust unfortunately becomes a function's reputation, or sometimes goes into even people. So that is the part that I would say that lacking of trust is the foundation for everything else. And to me, that is something that we need to address. Once we have the data integrity, we need to review the process. That process will take a little bit of time, but once again, if you map this out, this potentially is the benefit of working as training academically as an engineer. I build a flow chart of step by step, where just like you do programming, the first step is data input, step one, who does what, until the very end. So you map it out end to end, and you think about how to make it better of the process, where the opportunities are. If you have a continuous improvement team, they can help you do that. If you don't, but if you are experienced finance leader or finance professionals, you most of the time you can spot something out yourself as well. So you can make the process better. And if you don't have a forum for all the leaders come together, I strongly suggest that being added as part of the process. Once you have the trust in the data, the regular process, then the people part is actually come naturally, because you have these opportunities to have regular touch points. They see your transparency. They see how you put things together. They see the single source of truth of the data feeding into the analysis as the foundation of your recommendation for the actions. And they see all the analysis you do on a regular basis for different business scenarios. People start naturally buying into the process. And once you have the early quick wins, that will accelerate this even more. So that's how we do it. And then that's how you overcome the resistance internally. Okay, Michael, Bernie, do we have any other questions or comments? Or we're at the end of our scheduled time?
Hi, Shu. I think we're at the end, and that's the last of our questions for now. But we thank you so much for being here. We love having you, and can't wait to have you join us again.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. Now, this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Now, our next session will begin at 11:35 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be a marketplace thought leadership and demo titled The AI First Controller Jumps Coding for Finance Paradigm Shift. Please remain on the stage, and the next session will begin automatically. We look forward to seeing you there. Shu, thank you.
Thank you.